Today on The Deep Dive, we're talking about the faithfulness of God. Hi, I'm Pastor Tyler Hazelwood, and today on The Deep Dive, we're going to be talking about one of the best traits of God. It's hard to choose which trait is the best trait because God is awesome and perfect in himself, but one of the greatest traits of God and one of the traits that I'm most thankful for is his faithfulness. And as we look all throughout Scripture, there are some pretty crazy things that happen in the Bible. For example, Jonah was eaten by a large fish because he did not obey the word of the Lord. The book of Judges is a crazy book that is just filled with terrible things that happen that show us our need for a redeemer. And one of these crazy stories from the scripture is told by the prophet Hosea, and it's told through the eyes of the prophet of Hosea. And Hosea was a great man of God, and God made him a promise, basically. God said, I am going to give you a wife. Now, that doesn't sound too crazy. That's something that God does. He blesses people with spouses. It's not good for man to be alone after all. But here's the catch. The wife that God gave to Hosea was named Gomer. And Gomer was not exactly your stereotypical prophet's wife by any means. In fact, Gomer, the reason that God gave Gomer to Hosea was the fact that she was unfaithful. So you would think, man, this great man of God, God's going to give him such a faithful wife. God's going to give him such an honorable wife. And that was absolutely not the case here. And so God says to Hosea, you are going to marry Gomer, the unfaithful woman. And so he obeys the Lord and he marries Gomer. And of course, Gomer stays true to being unfaithful. Gomer sleeps with different men. She visits with different men, that kind of thing. And at this time, Israel was worshiping false idols. Israel was falling into so many different kinds of sins. Israel was Gomer. And Hosea was supposed to represent God. And so God said to Hosea, Hosea, you are representing me. The way that you love your wife, even though she's unfaithful to you, is going to be a testimony to the way that I love Israel, even though Israel is unfaithful to me. And now, if I ask this question, who would you say that you are in this story? Because I'll tell you that there have been so many times that I've been Gomer. And there really is a prophetic message here in this book. There's a prophetic message that Hosea tells us, and that is that to a faithless generation, and that's what we're living in right now. We are living in a faithless generation that is filled with people who will disobey the voice of God, who will worship false idols, who will choose things over God. To them, God says, I am going to be faithful to you. And I want you to know today that it doesn't matter how you've turned away from God. It doesn't matter the things that you've done, how unfaithful you've been. I want you to know that God is faithful to you. And God says, I'm waiting for them to turn back to me. It doesn't matter what you've done. You know, there's this saying that you can never be too far gone for God. If you'll have a heart that is softened to him, that says, I'm going to turn away from my wicked ways. And you don't have to even be that bad to be wicked. You know, if you choose something in life over God, then you have broken a commandment. You have become like Gomer, and you've been unfaithful to God. If there's a certain sin that just has a hold of your life, then you've been like Gomer and you've been unfaithful to God. But the great thing is that God is faithful to those who are unfaithful to him. And he gives opportunity time after time and after time again. And so my challenge to you today is to see what is in your life that is before God and to say, no, I'm not going to have this anymore. God is going to be number one in my life. And I'll tell you, when you do that, you will absolutely be blessed. This has been a deep dive, and I'll see you next week right here.